Today I'm going to show you how I built this front-end mentor card component using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, so here we have the card component fully built out. Ignore the fact that this is a link right now. I'm going to show you why I did that in a second, but you can see it's fully responsive. You can click the share icon and the little widget pops up. If I make it mobile, it pops up on the bottom, and then if I make it super mobile, it pops up like that. I used a combination of utility classes and component classes, basically. We have a few different things in our CSS. So here you can see we're pulling in a few different style sheets. We're pulling in our reset, we're pulling in utilities, we're pulling in a custom properties, and we're pulling in a components. If I look at the reset's pretty simple. It's just some basic things. It's taking the margin off of the headings, making images by default 100% width of their parent. I just did a few things on the body just to center the card in the middle of the page, but normally you wouldn't want to do this. And then in utilities, we have a few different combinations. We have some layout utility classes, mainly just to display flex, and then a flex column if I need it, and then some basic flex items. If you need anything more complex than this, I usually would make just a component class. And then we have a few typography utilities for the colors, and then the font sizes, and the font weights, and then the font family. And then we have same thing for colors for backgrounds, and rounded corners, and transparent, just a few specialty utility classes. And then this is the custom properties file, which basically is just declaring a bunch of variables or custom properties. We got our line heights, and we have our letter spacings, defining this. The reason I'm doing the colors like this, I got it from Kevin Powell. It's actually a pretty cool thing, is that you take the variable and you feed it into an HSL. So let me go to a component real quick. Actually, it's let's go to the utility classes. So you see here background white. I take the HSL and then you feed in the color. So if I ever need to make something where it's transparent or add opacity, I can just add a slash and then the opacity, and it'll work like that. So it's a neat little trick. Okay, and then we'll look at the components class, where we have a couple specific components that I'm using sort of BIM style naming conventions, and then we have some media queries. So let's take a look at the HTML real quick. So you can see I'm just setting the background very light, setting the font family, because most font properties are inherited. So if I just set the font family on the body, it'll inherit to everything else. So you don't have to set a specific font family on everything. So I'm setting sort of a default font here using this utility class. And then we have our container, which just adds some padding. And you can see here, everything's kind of sitting inside of this card component. And some things have utility classes, and then if something needs to be display flex, I'll put a display flex utility class, but then I'll put this, if I need something more special with Flexbox, I'll leave the flex utility class, but then I'll put the flex declarations inside of the components. So a good example of that would be in this card details here. You can see here we have a display flex on it, but then if we go to the component, because I needed to align things in the center, because you see this is the card component, and then this is the details, and we needed to center everything. I believe this is there. Let's inspect real quick. So yeah, see, this is the card details. I wanted to sort of center everything inside of that, and the way to do that would be align center. I have an align center utility class, but I don't want to use that on here because I have a component class. Now if I scroll down a little bit more, we have a flex column, and then I'm just putting a justify between. I am using that flex utility class because this doesn't have a component class on it. So instead of creating a whole separate component class, when I just want to make a column and have everything justified between, I can just use that utility class. And that helps keep the components CSS file a little cleaner. And you can see here too, I'm doing the same thing where I have a display flex, and then I just use align center to center. It's for the widget here. I just use the center to center the icons inside of their parent div. And that way it doesn't really need its own component class. So that's why I can just use the utility classes to quickly do it. And everything works out nicely. And it's pretty clear what's happening, that you're making flex and you're just aligning its center. And sometimes I use the font size utility classes, like for the share heading, because the font size doesn't change. But then for other things, like say this heading here, the font size does change. So instead of defining the font size in a class up in here, I use the utility class card heading right here. See, I define the font size 400, because when we go down to our media query, I change the font size to 500. So I use the utility classes when I'm pretty sure nothing's going to change, and then I use the component classes when I know things are going to change in the media queries. And I wanted to show you, why did I make this a link? So the way this works, I had a little bit of trouble with this to get this kind of to pop up like it does here. So what's happening is that we're actually just setting a class transparent on our widget. So it's still here, it's just transparent. You can actually see it get highlighted here. If I select it here, you can see it's still there. But what I did is that, because in case you wanted to say make the, you could click the author's name and then go to their profile or something, I didn't want to make it so that it blocked anything from being clicked here. So you can still click these, but I didn't want it to block any of this stuff. So what I did is that, and I learned this when I was doing this, is that if you have let's go to utilities class, if we have an opacity 0, but if you set pointer events to none, it won't have pointer events on the widget, but you can actually still click things underneath it. So that's actually a neat little trick I picked up while working on this. And then you can still do this, and you can still click the icons, because when we remove that transparent class, the pointer events are turned back on also. And that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Bye.